This is the first of a new type of video I want to do for this channel more often. A deep dissection of Star Trek. I think you'll see that it is a deeper dissection than most channels. I tend to hyper-focus on Star Trek to the point that I am sort of an expert on TOS, TNG, and the first 6 Star Trek movies. But this takes a lot of time and research. The next dissection I want to make is a video of duotronics. Although I really need more subs, I am about halfway to my sub count for monetization, but less than a quarter of the way in view hours. So if you have the time, I do have a playlist of my videos. Monetization would help me justify spending more time on Star Trek. Another way to help is to also sub to my Quasar Productions channel and watch my Galactic Police pilot episode. I also have cooking videos there too. I'll leave a link to that channel and my playlist to my Star Trek videos in the comment section and description. I once wrote this article in MSN groups about star mapping in Star Trek before they deleted that service, but I failed to save the article, thus I had to figure out the specifics again. Today we'll be exploring 23rd century star mapping. The original study was more focused on TOS, but I will add movie and TNG references too. I would actually like to do some more TOS tech studies that just takes TOS as its own thing. There's a lot more to star mapping than the quadrants and sectors we're used to talking about. This video is not covering how the setting of a course works, but I will leave this clip from TNG that explains the basics of it, and maybe someday I'll make a video on that subject.
And helm control is here, with the ship's heading being given in measurements we call degrees. 360 of them in a full circle this way.
Then you say mark.
On the nose.
Which separates it from another full 360-degree circle this way on a right angle to this one.
So by ordering a heading so many degrees this way and so many this way, the ship can travel in any direction. All 3 dimensions.
Number 1. Horizontal Quadrants. Let's start with some familiar territory with the Horizontal Quadrants. This is a system that uses Greek letters like Alpha, Beta, Delta, and Gamma quadrants. In this system, the galaxy is divided into 4 sections from a top-down view with the aforementioned naming scheme. This was a more popular term in the Next Generation and beyond. The closest reference we get in the original series is Star Trek VI. This is after TNG started the system. Sulu logs that he was finishing his survey in the Beta Quadrant, and later Sulu tells Kirk that they are in the Alpha Quadrant.
Stardate 9521.6. Captain's log USS Excelsior. Hikaru Sulu commanding. After 3 years, I've concluded my first assignment as master of this vessel, cataloging gaseous planetary anomalies in Beta Quadrant.
I'm getting underway now. We're now in Alpha Quadrant. The chances of our reaching the conference in time are slim.
Number 2. Vernal Quadrents. Most people know about horizontal quadrants, but what about something people don't know about? Vernal Quadrants. So what are vernal quadrants and where is it in on-screen canon? The only canon that I personally care about. Well, it is seen on screen in Menagerie Part 1. It is in a report describing Talos 4 as being in the 3rd quadrant of the Vernal Galaxy. Now one might think that the 3rd quadrant could be the Delta Quadrant, given that the cage tells us that they were on the course between Rigel and Vega at the time. They could not be in the Delta Quadrant.
Rigel 7. Starting just as it happened 2 weeks ago.
Because we're going to stop first at the Vega colony and replace anybody who needs hospitalization.
What's on your mind, Chris? The fight on Rigel 7?
Shouldn't it be?
A little red herring. Pike did say that they were from the Stella group on the other side of the known galaxy.
Can you hear me? My name is Christopher Pike, commander of the Space Vehicle Enterprise from the Stella Group at the other end of this galaxy.
But I think he was lying. These are aliens who have proven themselves to be hostile. You may ask yourself, why would he lie to someone who could read his mind? Well, he actually said this right before he found out they can read his mind. So what is the vernal galaxy? Currently, the word vernal refers to the spring, which is not very useful. In astronomy, there is the vernal equinox, which just means the spring equinox. But vernal does sound a lot like vertical, so I believe that it is a reference to the vertical view of the galaxy. You could just divide the galaxy into four this way. In the episode Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, we are told that Charon is in the southernmost part of the galaxy, an uncharted quarter.
From the planet Charon. That's in the southernmost part of the galaxy, in an uncharted quarter.
Since Earth is just 14 light years offset of the center line of the galaxy, I propose that we are in Vernal Quadrant 2. But I'll cover that more in the sector section. This would suggest that quadrants 1 and 2 are the northern quadrants. If this is the case, then the unexplored quadrant would be Vernal Quadrant 4, i.e. the southernmost part of the galaxy. In Wink of an Eye, we are told by Scott that they are exploring an outer quadrant of the galaxy.
Ship's log, stardate 5710.5. Lieutenant Commander Scott reporting. While exploring an outer quadrant of the galaxy, the Enterprise received distress calls from an apparently uninhabited, incredibly beautiful city on the planet of Scalus.
That only makes sense in the context of the vernal galaxy system. In the first system, no quadrant is more outer than another. Again, I suggest that this is Vernal Quadrant 4. This is interesting because only 2 episodes later is the aforementioned Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. Between them, an episode that could take place in this quadrant. Another reference we are told is that Argelius is the only port for trading in that quadrant.
Argelian hospitality is well known, as well as its strategic importance as a spaceport.
Yes, I believe it's the only one in the quadrant.
Most would interpret this to mean Beta Quadrant, but now I wonder if it's in Vernal Quadrant 4. I also suspect that Cestus 3 is in the same quadrant, as they do speak of it being on the edge of unexplored space.
I wonder why he's so insistent that our tactical aids come down.
This colony is isolated, exposed, out on the edge of nowhere. He probably wants additional advice.
I like this idea that until Arena, Argelius was not the only port for trading in that quadrant. We are given some specific information on the location of Argelius. Spock explains that if you drew a straight line from Earth to Alpha Erdani 2 to Argelius, it is a straight line. The computer also added another murder occurring at Rigel 4 1 year ago.
Cases of unsolved mass murders of women since Jack the Ripper.
2156, Heliopolis, Alpha Eridani 2, 10 women knifed to death. There are additional examples.
Captain, those places are aligned directly between Argelius and Earth.
Computer, identify the proper names Kessler and Maratus.
Maratus, name given to unidentified mass murderer of women on planet Rigel 4. Additional data. Murders on Rigel 4 occurred 1 solar year ago.
The murder is clearly done by the same entity, placing Argelius past Rigel. Rigel is 900 light years away from Earth, so if it is facing the correct direction, it would be placed in at least Vernal Quadrant 3. This matches because, as I said earlier in the cage, they left Rigel headed towards Vega. We also learn in the Menagerie that Talos 4 is in the 3rd Vernal Quadrant. 3. Sectors. Next we have sectors. We know from Best of Both Worlds that Earth is in Sector 001.
Shelby to Riker.
Go ahead.
Captain, the Borg have entered Sector 001.
Which would suggest an Earth-centric system. In the episode The Wounded, Geordi said,
And with long-range sensors, we've been scanning a radius of 10 light years.
We can effectively scan 1 sector a day.
This would suggest that a sector is 20 light years, but that is up for argument. Let's look at some other sectors. According to Balance of Terror, the Romulans are in Sector Z6, and in the episode Changeling, Sector 39J is brought up.
Kirk here, go ahead.
will divert immediately to Sector 39J.
What could the letter mean, and why are they on different sides of the number? Well, I think I have an answer for that. If you remember, the last section we spoke of northern and southern areas of the galaxy. But what if the letter represents the vertical position of the sector? When the letter is on the left side, it is in the northern areas, and if it is on the right side of the sector, it is in the southern areas of the galaxy. I picked this because it would place the Romulan sector from Balance of Terror near the center of the Vernal galaxy, which could also be close to Sector 001. My early research indicates that Earth is about 14 light years north of the Galactic Equatorial Symmetry Plane. If the Z sectors aren't on the bottom of the galaxy, it would help place Romulus near Earth. 4. Sections. The next level down in navigation is sections. Sections were only mentioned in Star Trek II, while in the simulator Savick logs.
Captain's log. Stardate 8130.3. Starship Enterprise on training mission to Gamma Hydra, Section 14. Coordinates 2287-4. Approaching neutral zone. All systems normal and functioning.
Leaving Section 14 for Section 15.
While she never specifically called it a sector, it is implied that she meant Gamma Hydra sector. Sometimes sectors are referred to by name instead of the sector coordinates that I covered in the last section. Gamma Hydra is a real star, 133.8 light years from Earth. Kirk and crew visited this system in the Deadly Years. It is obvious that the sector was named after this system. It is clear that sections are a subdivision of sectors. It is hard to know how many sections there are in a sector, but there is another mention of sections in Star Trek II.
Reliant in our section, this quadrant, sir. And slowly.
Quadrants. In that clip, Sulu not only said that the Reliant was in their section, but this quadrant. It is clear that this is a third type of quadrant, smaller than a section. It would make sense of episodes where we are given quadrants in a context that does not fit the Greek letter or vernal quadrant system of measurement. Now, in Balance of Terror, we do see this map that I showed earlier, but they do not give us enough information to know how big a square is. But in TNG, we do have 2 instances of such maps that we do have distance references for. Admittedly, there is enough vagueness to these figures that we can only do estimates, but still, it is useful information. And we might be able to deduce the size of the map squares.
The warship is 300,000 kilometers from the Phoenix.
It would be hard to measure using pixels, so I just printed out a hard copy. Measuring the distance on my printout to the warship, it comes to about 132 millimeters. The distance is supposed to be 300,000 kilometers away from the Phoenix. Dividing 300,000 kilometers by the 132, we get each millimeter coming out as 2,273 when we round up. Measuring the size of each square, it comes out to about 127 millimeters. So 2,273 times 127 millimeter for each square comes to about 288,671 kilometers. For reference, a light second is 299,792 kilometers. Given the ambiguity of the data, maybe we could round it up to a light second. I would be interested in seeing some figures on the speeds of the ships based off of my information. In Redemption Part 2, we are treated to this map of the Blockade. At one point, the tachyon net is disrupted by the Romulans. Data tells us that the field is disrupted within 10 million kilometers.
Data here, sir.
We're reading a disruption of the tachyon net in your area.
Yes, sir. The Romulans have released a high-energy burst. The net is no longer effective in a radius of 10 million kilometers around the Sutherland.
Unfortunately, the disruption continues to spread while data speaks, so what is 10 million kilometers is a bit elusive, but I took 2 images from when he started to speak to finish speaking to measure. The first image I measure 4 centimeters and the second comes to 7 centimeters. So 10 million divided by 40 millimeters is 250,000 kilometers per millimeter on this map. 10 million divided against 70 millimeters comes to about 143 kilometers per millimeter. But to give the max leeway, let's go with the bigger figure we get from the 4 centimeter measurement. Since the squares measure out to 4 centimeters, that means each square is 10 million kilometers. This is nowhere near a light year, which is 9.46 trillion kilometers. It actually comes out to 33.35 light seconds per square, which is also slower than a light minute, which is 18 million kilometers. So let's have a little fun with these figures. It is not looking good for Picard's Blockade. Measuring this way, it comes to 247.5 millimeters. This way, 238 millimeters. And the short side is 197 millimeters. Taking the numbers times 250,000 kilometers, the long way comes to 61,875,000 kilometers, 59,500,000 kilometers, and the short way is 49,250,000 kilometers. At best, the Blockade is 3.44 light minutes long to 2.74 light minutes. These figures can be slightly improved if we figure that the net can actually detect ships that have not actually crossed the line. Here, we see them doing just this.
The detection net is picking up activity from the Romulans. 15 cloaked ships spreading out along the border.
It also makes sense because if not, they would have just gone through one of the many holes in the net. Luckily, we have data on this too. In a strategy to get the Romulans to run the blockade, the fleet made a hole big enough for the Romulan fleet to get through.
When Gowron begins his attack, then we will make our move. Excalibur will fall back with engine problems, and you will take the Akagi and the Hornet to this position, which will open a small gap in our detection net.
And if the Romulans are already aware of the tachyon field, they should run the blockade at that point.
Exactly. But when they try to bring their ships through, the Enterprise and the Tiananmen will swing around, close the gap, catch them in the act.
The gap measures to 60 millimeters, but we have to divide that in half to 30 millimeters. This means you have to add 7.5 million kilometers to these figures. At best, they have to go a little further to make sure they are not detected. This is all I have for you today. Maybe someday I'll be able to do a follow-up on this. I do wonder how they know where in the galaxy they are. At any rate, I thank you for watching and would be honored if you were to watch my Galactic Police pilot episode, linked down below.